The views and opinions expressed in To the Point are those of the host of the program and its guests. They do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of WGTE Public Media.
Hello and welcome to The Point. Today we're taking a closer look at the community reaction to the proposed Dorr Street development project. While city leaders describe the project as a catalyst for growth and revitalization, some community members are asking harder questions about its impact. Among them is Robert Smith, Executive Director of the African American Legacy Project, who, along with other residents and stakeholders, has voiced concerns about transparency, neighborhood impact, and whether the proposed benefits will truly reach those who live and work along the corridor. Is this development the right fit for the community, and is the process earning public trust? Well, today we examine those questions and the broader conversation unfolding around Dorr Street. I'm Doni Miller, and welcome to The Point. Connect with us on our social media pages, and you know that you can email me at Doni_Miller@WGTE.org. And for this episode and any other additional extras, go to WGTE.org, To the Point. We have with us today our guest, Robert Smith, who's the Executive Director of the African American Legacy Project, but also one of the primary voices in the discussion, the recent discussion in some ways. In other ways, it's been a long-term discussion about the revitalization of Dorr Street. And there is a little bit of back and forth around what the city should be doing in regard to that revitalization, given their recent acquisition of the RAISE grant. So I'd like to talk to you today about, since you are one of the major voices among those expressing community concerns, I'd like to talk to you a bit about where those concerns come from, why now, and what it is you hope to get at the end of all of this. So let's put some context to this for our audience. The community has applied for, the city specifically, has applied for and received a RAISE grant. Is that correct? Correct. And that grant proposal included improving the infrastructure, safety, mobility, and connectivity of areas of the city where residents need it most, is what's in the proposal. The city has chosen the Uptown neighborhood and the Junction neighborhood in which your organization sits.
And Inglewood.
And Inglewood, thank you for that, for the project. Sounds great.
It does sound great. Absolutely sounds great. We were involved in this very early in the process, consultants and everything. And, you know, immediately we had questions because we wanted to understand what the RAISE grant was. Contrary to popular belief, some people out think that we don't understand that this is an infrastructure grant. It's clearly an infrastructure grant, and it's really just positioned perfectly for these communities which they've targeted. Early on, the questions were, some of the key selling points were the ability of young men and women to ride their bicycles for a bike path from their neighborhood, Junction, Inglewood, and then turn around and end up at the William Palmer Y, whether it was the mid of winter or the heat of summer, and bypass the Frederick Douglass Center, who had the same or similar services. So, you know, then the other point was, you know, they were making points about, you know, that path lead people from the community to opportunity. And I'm thinking, should we not have that same opportunity but in the context of the community? So there were just a number of questions that we've raised over time. In fact, it's been about two and a half years where we've had the same or similar discussions. So it just didn't sit right. So we wanted to go and learn more about what the grant capability was. And so its capability is to use infrastructure to make a community such as our community, either Junction, Inglewood, and we're focused on the Artatum Historic District, where we can express later, was make that developer ready and investor friendly and begin to change this narrative about who the African American community is. It's been 60 years.
Since?
Nearly
60 years.
Nearly 60 years since the city made incredible promises about, redeveloping the Dorr Street Business District. Mm-hmm. The RAISE grant is right in front of us right now. The last major funding opportunity was Portside. And neighbors signed off on developing Portside. And those promises were there. 60 years later, Portside's not there, but the neighborhood is sort of still standing, very fragile.
Yeah.
The last dollars came in was those ARPA dollars and Biden dollars. We didn't benefit from that either. And now, go right ahead.
No, please, finish.
And now the RAISE grant sits squarely in front of us. If you go to the city's website, you see the executive summary, which totally outlines who the grant is supposed to benefit. Our question is, did we get left behind? And if we got left behind, why did we get left behind? And how can we rectify that?
So your position, if I might infer from your comments, is that the community has been left behind in this discussion.
Proportionately, there's a $53 million award, or at least with a match. And of that $53 million, less than 3%, or approximately around 3%, will go into the neighborhood. It's about $700,000 off that grant. $53 million will travel elsewhere. You can say that maybe the city didn't understand, but I invite anybody to go to the internet and look at something called Mending Broken Promises of Dorr Street, and high city officials talk about really understanding that. So
I read that.
So we really need to. I won't say, go right ahead.
So I think the concern or the questions that seem to arise that are contrary to your position have to do not with whether your position is appropriate. I think that everyone would say, city council, the mayor, I've not spoken to any of them about this, but I did read an interview that the mayor gave on in 2024, in fact, on the importance of revitalizing the Dorr Street corridor. I think that they would say that this is not the vehicle to do that. And I've heard you say that this is in fact the vehicle.
It is actually the perfect vehicle. If you look at, 70% of that neighborhood, or the two neighborhoods, represent African Americans. Fully 28% of African Americans, the population of Toledo is African American, yet only 17.5% of that district represents the tax base. That alone just shows you the decline in disinvestment.
Right.
We can't continue this,
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the decline in and the disinvestment in the neighborhood.
Sure.
The conversations that I hear round and about sound as though you think it's intentional, or do you think it's neglect?
Well, if the grant was written on the basis of the neighborhoods, they certainly are aware of the plight.
Okay.
At one point, there was a blank piece of paper, and decisions were made. The consequence of that is we're still in the same position, or maybe worse. The social psychological impact, no businesses, no tax base, no opportunity for generational wealth. How much longer do we have to acquiesce to being, I don't want to use the word, to being marginalized, if you will? It's perfect time. The grant was written there. Its purpose is in front of us. There's no way that we shouldn't have that opportunity. We look at it as though, I'll say it in this manner, the African American community may not be a high priority. 60 years will give you that opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I think for people who, are looking at this issue, if I may,
Sure.
who are looking at this as a singular instance, what I hear you saying is that this has been, from your perspective and those who are with you on this issue, this has been a 60-year process of disinvestment.
Ask any government official, and they can recite chapter and verse the story of Dorr Street.
And that is exactly where I was going. Thank you for taking us there. We've got 2 minutes left. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Very simply, we were in a meeting with several city officials, and they were telling me about the disinvestment. And I sat back and I'm going, okay, this is a part of the story that I don't have to tell. The community, across community, everyone is very, very aware. And because of that, you know, there's an elevation, there's a growing, it's not just about Robert Smith. Let me be clear about this. We have cadres of people now meeting. We are meeting in the churches now, and particularly we're meeting in historic churches, such that we have the ability to, they are an institution, they are a profound institution. Absolutely. They have led us all the time. And what we're doing automatically, we're trying to demonstrate to whomever, particularly inside the community and particularly outside the community, that we had a community that was full of life.
That's right. That's right. We are going to start at that point when we come back, because that is an important description in this conversation. You're going to stay with me, right? We will be right back.
To me, community means connecting to others.
I'm Doni Miller, and welcome to The Point.
I love CBS Kids!
We're a community committed to education. Discover new ideas, dive into exciting subjects, and engage with the world around you.
I would send them personally a t-shirt. Crime doesn't pay in the old West End, pass it on. That's how we cleaned up the neighborhood.
Vision loss for people is not the end.
It's a story. It's the next chapter.
WGTE Public Media invites you to Get Out and Play Day.
Monday through Friday, it's the 419 powered by WGTE. With Matt Killam, Gretchen DeBacker, I'm Kevin Mullen. What can people expect on the show?
It's going to be an hour, a reminder of why this is a great place to live, work, and play.
WGTE, where you come to watch, listen, and learn.
Connect with us on our social media pages, but you know that. You also know that you can email me at Doni_Miller@WGTE.org. I really love hearing from each and every one of you. For this episode and other additional extras, go to WGTE.org, to the point. We are speaking in the second segment of our show with Robert Smith. Mr. Smith is the executive director of the African American Legacy Project and one of the primary voices of a community concerned that they are being left behind, and that the city, in its recent acquisition of the RAISE grant, is not quite hearing what they have to say. Is that a fair assessment of where you are? When we went to break, we were talking about the Dorr Street that was an example of why the community is so insistent on the city hearing about ways to use the RAISE grant for revitalization.
You know, I'm a product of that area. At 18 years old, I was working in a place called Clark's Record Shop. I'm overjoyed to $2.35 an hour, and that little badge and sweat. But all around were business men and women who taught me being on time, who taught me, you know, the importance of business, who showed their little profit centers that they would create inside the business, who mentored and also chastised me and others. You know, it was a real community, alive and well. There was a bar called the M&L, and there was two brothers on it. Mayweather Hardy sat in his bar and played chess with everybody who walked. Mr. Hardy was just wore a business suit every day. The Sky Blossom, not too far from him was Billups Appliance Center, which turned into the Black Giants Appliance Center. Mr. Billups, you talk about generational wealth. Mr. Billups took that, and you walked into his shop, and you saw he made appliance repairs, but you saw used and new appliances in there for sale. He made house. I mean, this uniform individual, and to think that young men and women under 40 have no idea about business principles, about African Americans or generational wealth, about the efficacy of owning your own, or about sharing, or about dignity and humanity among ourselves. And those two things, the dignity and humanity, are pretty much the same principle that we are asking others to see in terms of potentially redeveloping this area. You can't have it two ways. People, just a few months ago, people were talking about the SNAP program and needing insured. The SNAP program was always meant to be temporary. We cannot continue to subsist on that kind of federal welfare. We have the ability, we have the creativity, we have the opportunity to build something to sustain community and contribute to a tax base to be alive and in living color, if you will. It's really incredible to me that 60 years later, we're still talking about the same thing.
Are there examples in other cities of this conversation going on?
Sure. Oh, Detroit, there was a place called Black Bottom. You know, our larger Dorr Street is now called Paradise Valley. Columbus has the King Lincoln District, which we took a busload of people there, which just amplified. As a matter of fact, we were lucky enough to get one piece from Columbus. It's a mural as you enter the gateway into the city. People who contributed, African Americans who contributed significantly to the community. So we were lucky enough to get that piece in. There's also Kansas City Jazz District. It is amazing. There you have it. What that demonstrates you, and Kansas City is about to do Kansas City Jazz District 3. They're expanding. The opportunities are there. We are talking about creating this, reframing the district, branding the district as the Art Tatum Historic Business District. Obviously, we're talking about reaching beyond the community. This is not just a community project. One of our first initiatives, and we had started this about before we got sidetracked on getting involved and trying to ensure that the racetrack, there was some equity in the for the community in the raise grant. We had brought experts from Ohio State who talked about Art Tatum. We want to do an international piano competition, bringing cultures together. We can see the International Institute and others housing young men and women, and we can see parents and others connecting, and we can see government agencies, if we talk about economic growth, having the opportunity to reach into these other, put Toledo out front. A very easy mechanism. It's not just about this community. People have this lopsided view of why we're doing what we're doing, but we understand, that in order to be of importance to ourselves, we have to be of importance to others. We have something here. We talk about cultural assets.
So if elected officials persist in their position that this particular financial opportunity is not appropriate for what you and other community members are suggesting, are you open to continuing the conversation and looking for another vehicle?
We're always open to continuing conversations, but hopefully that continuing conversation will be about the raise grant.
Right.
If we were not to be included, you should not have put us so prominently in that grant. the grant is to distinguish disadvantaged communities and disinvestment. And the city talked about in the grant, whoever the writer was, about how I-75 created this turmoil and on and on and on. Well, if you don't think this is the right time, why did you use us? No, I don't think that I think that we have to look for additional opportunities, but I don't think that our community can weather another storm. 60 years from now, people who really care and understand what happened won't be in place. If we've been not a priority now, if there's no one talking about it 60 years from now, there is no priority. So for me, it's the grant is here and it's present, and it's not too late to change. We know that. We've looked into federal regs to know that, in this particular planning stage, there's opportunities to make adjustments, and that's all that is, engineering and otherwise. We're not asking the city to change. Someone thought, we sometimes get challenged because we don't quite understand what the grant's capable of doing. We absolutely do. We want to look for developers. We want people to come in and go, we want to start doing things in the community, and we are. And I need to say that's one of the reasons why we're working in the churches. We hold our meeting in the historic churches. We held one in Third Baptist, and as a result of Third Baptist, we are now creating a pipeline. October 3rd, the weekend of October 3rd, we're bringing Central State University here to create a pipeline between the Toledo community and Central State to go forward from now on, that they come up and recruit. And as I was talking to the young athletic director, everybody's young compared to me, she said, Mr. Smith, you'd be happy to know we just recruited 3 kids from Scott High School. So we want to reinforce that, and not just Scott High School, but the entire community. And I was talking to the new minister at 1AME, telling about the success of what we're going to do with Central State. He says, well, Wilberforce is our school. I said, well, Pastor, let's get started. So we can do things.
And do things.
And we should know that we can do things, and we don't have to necessarily be absolutely dependent. We want to demonstrate to others and to ourselves.
That brings me to a point that I wanted to make sure to raise with you. There was an editorial in the Blade in response to the group sort of pushing back and questioning the raised grant, and one of the statements in that editorial was, and it was overall, I think it was generally supportive of the notion that reinvestment needed to occur along the Dorr Street corridor, but it said, as I recall, that the community needs to seed new businesses. And did you read that?
That's the purpose of the raised grant.
Okay.
So
I was going to ask your response to that.
Editorial, and the newspaper did invite me to respond, but some of the things weren't so accurate, so I didn't see a need to defend a position that wasn't correct. So we just left that alone. However, someone else wrote one to counter what transpired. But the public discourse is not where we need to be, and we've kept discussions tamped down inside the community.
How would you suggest changing that in the couple of minutes we have left? And is it important to change that?
We're going to open up the door. We're going to open up the door.
All right.
It's time. The city, I don't call it a crisis, but outsiders, if you're looking from inside out, we have nothing. But here's the opportunity, and you're telling us, let's look for some other dollars. These dollars really are life-changing. And And the city understands that. There's no question that the city understands that. I just think they felt comfortable in maybe focusing the dollars elsewhere. I don't know if the need is greater. I doubt it. You can't go into any other neighborhood and see the devastation. We are here to work with the city in any capacity necessary to get this project moving forward.
Done. This is an important conversation, and we obviously need to have it again and again and again. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this important conversation, and I look forward to seeing you again on To the Point. Enjoy your day.
The views and opinions expressed in To the Point are those of the host of the program and its guests. They do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of WGTE Public Media.
To the Point is supported in part by viewers like you. Thank you.